Welcome to Spirit, Purpose, and Energy. I'm JJ Flazanes, your host. Thank you for downloading today's episode. I do appreciate it. Today's show is sponsored by whalewisdomretreats.com. And like last week, I am not going to send you to whalewisdomretreats.com. I'm going to send you to dolphinhealing.net. That's dolphinhealing.net. If you scroll down to the middle of the page, you can join a free monthly group dolphin energy healing session. I just did this with Ann Gordon about a week ago over the holiday, and it was a very relaxing, very powerful guided meditation that she does live for free the last weekend of every month, but you have to get on the list to know when it's going to be because it's based on where she is and if she's doing a tour and where she has internet and when she can do it. So that's the downside of the scheduling part, but it's an hour long, about approximate. She does maybe 40 minutes or 45 minutes, but it's a great way for you to experience Anne. If you heard her show from a few weeks ago that we did about dolphin and whale energy healing and the trips that she does and the excursions that are just so profound and amazing and healing, which we'll be doing one next year. So I'd love you to experience Anne at dolphinhealing.net. Now, if that's not of interest to you because of the schedule and you want to download one of her 2 free amazing gifts, then go to whalewisdomretreats.com. So you have your choice, whalewisdomretreats.com or dolphinhealing.net. Today's show is love-based persuasion. I've got on Michele PW. Michele is a copywriter who I've actually hired and worked with before. And what I love about what she brings to the conversation, because some of you are going to say, well, I don't need a copywriter. I don't have my own business. But what is copywriting? Copywriting is basically persuasion. It's sales. And we're all selling something all the time. Even if you're not exchanging money or product, you're selling ideas. You're selling desire. You're selling connection. You're trying to get somebody to behave in a certain way, not in a manipulation, but just in a way that, let's say, even if it's communication, you're trying to communicate in a certain way. So we can look at that as persuasion. And of course, knowing how to use persuasion to your best advantage would be very helpful in any situation, whether it be if you work for somebody or if you don't. Obviously, if you do sell things, that helps you. And if you want to get a raise or you want your boss or upper management to treat you differently, then love-based persuasion will be helpful for you. So Michele PW is the best-selling author of the Love-Based Business series of books that share how to sell more with love and build a solid, profitable business on a foundation of love. In addition, she owns a copywriting and marketing company that has sold nearly $50 million worth of products and services over the past 8 years. In her spare time, she also writes psychological thrillers, mystery and suspense books. 2 are currently published, The Stolen Twin and Mirror Image, with a new 3-book series out in 2018. Welcome to the show, Michele.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you on the show because I think what you're going to talk about today is a very interesting topic. We're going to spin something. So I've worked with Michele. I've hired Michele to write copy for me in the past for actually the Invisible Fitness Formula, the last book that came out last year, and this whole idea of this mind, body, soul integration that I've been doing. And I chose Michele because of her loved-based business, books and copywriting and focus. And so what I thought would be really fun to talk about with Michele, because if you think about what she does, you might say, well, but I'm not a business owner. I don't have anything to sell. But isn't persuasion, aren't relationships on every level some variation of persuasion?
That's exactly it, because we, as humans, we live in communities. And so, that we're social creatures. And part of being a social creature means we need to communicate, right? And part of communication is persuasion. So it doesn't matter if you're trying to get your kids to go to bed at the right bedtime, if you're trying to persuade your husband to take you out to your favorite restaurant, even though he doesn't really care for it, or if you are simply trying to persuade someone to buy something, which is how we normally think of it. But that's really just one tiny place in our lives where we use persuasion.
Well, I love this topic for the reason that people think of communication and relationships like manipulation.
Exactly.
And I think that manipulation is not an accurate nor great frequency or vibration to go into a relationship with. Nobody wants to be manipulated, but we can understand, and I use astrology to do that. And we're not going to do that here today, but that's one of the reasons I use astrology, is to figure out how to have better communication with people. And you can communicate in a way they understand, and you can get them on board to do what you want them to do in a more authentic way. And so that's that piece. But this piece is also just using general language and using love based. And so I do love for my business, I love your love based business and love based marketing and love based copy and everything love based that you do, because I know that you also come from the opposite of that. So why don't you tell everybody actually where you started with that and how you got to branding yourself as love based business?
Yes, so I taught myself to read when I was 3 years old because I wanted to write stories so badly. I wanted to write fiction. And so as you can imagine, writing was a big part of my life. And then when I was a teenager, I was casting around trying to figure out something to do while I was writing my books. And everyone told me to be a journalist, and I said, oh my God, that's the last thing I want to be. So it was at sometime in my 20s that I kind of discovered this whole wacky world of copywriting, which is writing promotional materials for business. It has nothing to do with putting a copyright on something. So one of the things that I realized is in my quest of learning to write a copy, because really what direct response copy actually is, just so it's clear, because I know a lot of you, if you're not business owners, you don't realize this, but it's basically salesmanship in print. That's another way to say it. And so a lot of the slimy, salesy stuff that you feel when you're talking to a salesman, like especially a used car salesman, it's possible you can also feel that when you are reading direct response copy. And that's like those long sales letters that you're scrolling down forever going, how much is this thing? Does anybody read all this copy anyways? Well, you wouldn't say copy. Does anyone read all these words anyways? When you're getting an email, when you're clicking on a link, if you go to an opt-in page where you're putting in your name and email address, all of those are examples of what it is I do. And what makes direct response copy so powerful is that it actually is persuading people to take action. Because at the end of the day, what you want is for them to take action. They're not just reading an article and saying, oh, that's nice. You actually want them to take action. And if you want anybody to take action, it doesn't matter if this is direct response or used car salesman or whatever you want somebody else to take action, you have to tap into their emotions. And you have a choice. You can tap into fear-based emotions, or you can tap into love-based emotions. And so when we talk about manipulation, the thing is that if you don't understand this, you're persuading people every minute of the day, because, there are things that you want people to take action. And a lot of times it can be for their own good, like your kids going to bed at a decent bedtime, or your kids not crossing the street, running in front of the street in front of a car. Those are good things to persuade your kids not to do. So this is not just about, just because you're persuading somebody to take action doesn't mean it's a bad thing. And so that's one of the places that I like to start. And the difference is that, are you tapping into their love-based emotions or your fear-based emotions? And if you're using fear to persuade your kids, if you're using fear, it will work, but then you're actually, that's what it is. You're turning it more into manipulation. And you could stay on the love-based side and actually use love to persuade and inspire and invite and all those other words. So that's why this can be so powerful.
Can you give us an example of a fear-based way to get your kids to bed and a love-based way to get your kids to bed?
So I would say a fear-based way to get your kids to bed would be anything like, if you don't go to bed now, you could really tap into it as like, some parents, I've heard stories where they say, you're going to get, a monster's going to come and get you. That's probably way on the side of it. But any sort of thing like, if you make me come in there one right now, I'm going to take away your phone. I'm going to not, you're not going to be able to, you're going to be grounded for the rest of the week. And I realize that, when they're trying your patience, you can easily get there. But I'm thinking any kind of that, when it's almost like an overreaction. So, like you're so fed up with them that they're not going to bed. So then you tell them if they don't do this, it's going to be, they're going to have, this far more worse punishment. Whereas if you were going to do this more in a love-based way, you could Now, granted, I know this, I mean, there's obviously some age related issues here. So there's obviously certain conversations you can't have with a toddler. But if you kind of get into the idea of this, so you can tap into reasons why they, that would be good for them to go to bed. You could talk, so, you could talk more about, getting a good night's sleep, getting health. That's the kind of thing. Now, like I said, there's age related stuff in there. But usually if you tap into what it is that they want, like their desire, like, don't you want to be awake tomorrow morning and feel really good because it's an exciting day? That's the kind of the energy around tapping more into love versus fear, if that makes sense.
Totally. Totally. And that form of persuasion obviously works because you are, like you said, appealing to their emotions, but you're also doing it in a way that's trying to get sort of that positive feeling versus the fear-based and the threatening. I know in business, we definitely had that as very prevalent, and you people feel it out there. People don't like sales, and the reason why you
Yeah.
don't like people most of the time when someone's trying to sell you something is because they're trying to play on your fears, and we resist that. And then we think everybody who sells is like that, and so we have this both. If you're trying to sell something, it's you have that icky feeling of like you don't want to do that and that resistance. And then if you're being sold something, sometimes it's hard to actually hear what you're being sold because you're too busy trying to resist not wanting to feel bad, right?
Exactly. And yeah, and you're resisting that. And also the other thing that's happening, especially in business, is when you use fear, you're actually triggering, you're actually making a point of triggering bad emotions. So for instance, like you're triggering shame is a big one. So so shame happens a lot for business. So it's that the whole energy of, well, obviously you don't take this, take your goals seriously, because if you did, you would be jumping all over this product. I remember one time I read a sales letter by a copywriter who said, God, if I had known about this conference, I would have walked on broken glass to get there. So, I mean, just way over the top. Shaming that obviously you obviously don't take yourself seriously as a copywriter if you haven't signed up for this course, or I think it was an event. It doesn't matter. So so when you're tapping into shame, so shame comes up, and the implied promise in the sales letter is that if you buy, then the shame will go down. And so let's look at this in other ways to kind of make this clear. So it's like, let's say you have a bad day. A lot of people, they come home, they have a bad day, and what do? They have a drink. Maybe they go in and have some chocolate ice cream. Maybe they gossip. Maybe they start a fight. Maybe they yell at their kids because they're just so frustrated with whatever happening at work, so they take it out on their kids. I mean, we've all been there. And again, there's no judgment or shaming, and this is not what this is about. But that's what happens. We have to let that emotion off somewhere. Where they've triggered this fear-based emotion, and fear-based emotions are fear, anxiety, worry, but also grief, shame, guilt, anger, resentment. All of that is also under fear. So, the fear bases are up. We have to do something to, for a lot of people, because we're not comfortable just sitting in it. We need to get rid of it. So that's why we have our actions that we take so we don't feel them. We're trying to not feel our fear-based emotions. So if you are reading a sales letter that's talking about walking on broken glass and triggering a lot of shame in you, the implied thing is if you buy the product, that the shame will go away. So that's the dynamic that's actually being created. And that's why buyer's remorse is so much higher with fear-based, because then what happens, like we've had one too many drinks because we've had a bad day, or we've yelled at our kids. What do you feel? You feel remorse afterwards, right? Because you know deep down that that this wasn't this wasn't a good response. So you reacted. So you feel remorse. So what happens after you buy something that's been triggered by fear? You feel remorse. You feel buyer's remorse. So then you're more likely to have refunds. You're more likely to have people who are just not not doing the course. They're not engaged. They're not getting the transformation. That's what's happening when you sell with fear.
So when you're selling with fear, you feel the remorse, which is why it feels bad. But let's talk about, like you said, persuading, for instance, your husband you gave the example of your husband not wanting to go to a certain restaurant that you love. So how would give us an example of appealing to that obviously the fear-based way would be, to threaten or
Or
to
shame.
compare.
I would think shaming is, shaming's actually used quite a bit. So I would think some sort of shame or some sort of guilt, so I think that would be, you're guilting your husband, oh, I've done so much for you, or why don't you ever do anything for me? That's what I think would be a form of trying to persuade your husband with shame or guilt on the fear-based way. But if you wanted to do it from the love-based perspective, you could always promise a little something that he wants afterwards if you do that, but just don't come from it from fear. Or you could tap into other things, like I would say you could also just say, like, okay, great, if we could go to my restaurant tonight, next week we'll do something that you want. I mean, I think that would be more of a way of communicating with your husband in more of a grown-up way, rather than trying to shame or guilt him into doing something.
Okay, that's fair. So let's take it in two more areas. I want to take it down the money path, since money is also love-based money is what you
Yes.
are doing as well. And then I want to take it down like a health path, food, exercise, weight loss, fitness, because it's the same thing. It's what Fit to Love was about when I wrote it. It's taking the shame out and exercising and doing self-care from a place of love, not from a place of shame and self-hatred. So, but I want to hear from you those two different scenarios, and you can take either one, whichever one first is fine, but I want to go down give us an example of fear-based and then love-based, either money and then or like self-talk for weight loss and fitness and health and things like that.
So money is really a fascinating one, because I do have my whole podcast, Love-Based Money, which is based on a book. And part of why I go there is because there's so much of our relationship with money is twisted up in fear. So here's a good example. Because this is something that I personally was really caught up in for a very long time, which was I wanted to make more money because I was convinced that that money was going to make me feel happy. So I was focusing on money because I thought, okay, so because what I am, I'm an Enneagram 6, so security is really important to me. And also fear is also, there seems to be, there's a reason why I'm probably in this, because fear is my like bugaboo. As an Enneagram 6, being secure. So we're the kind of people who are worried that, we're going to be bag ladies when we're 80 years old. And that's our worry. It doesn't matter what else we've got. That's the worry. So I had a lot of anxiety inside me for most of my life. I don't have anxiety anymore, but I had a lot of anxiety and a lot of worry. And I was convinced that I've had all this anxiety and worry was because I wasn't making enough money. So if I just started making more money, the anxiety and worry would go away, right? So what happened? Okay, well, I started making more money. I did. And the anxiety and worry didn't go away. And I went, maybe I haven't made enough money yet. Maybe I need to make more. So I made more money. And the anxiety and worry still did not go away. In fact, it got worse. The more money I made, the worse it got. And I was in this kind of trapped in this sort of toxic cycle, like this little hamster wheel, where I kept like running and chasing and trying to make more money because I wanted to feel better. But the more I made, the worse I felt. And it was very exhausting, as you can imagine. And just mentally, emotionally, physically, just the whole bit. I adopted a lot of unhealthy health habits. I was exercising quite a bit, which is actually not an unhealthy health habit, but I was also drinking too much, which was an unhealthy health habit, because that was the only way I could cope. That was the only way I could cope with the mess that was going on in my head. So that's an example of wanting money, having a fear-based relationship with money, because I was worried that about the whole security, and if I just need enough money. That's an example of how building your relationship with money on a foundation of fear. So now that's gone away, and the way it goes away, it starts with you. So you feel good inside. You already have the peace. You don't need money to give you peace. And actually, you know what? I gave you some things to kind of say to your husband and your kids, the kind of like the basis of love. But really what it comes down to is you aren't using your kids or your relationship, any of your relationships, to make you feel better. Like if you're not feeling loved, let's say we go back to that, trying to get your husband to go to the restaurant. And what I wasn't really saying, but what I was talking about, the fear-based way to say it, is you might be using the fact that your husband doesn't take you to the restaurant as a test. Like if you personally are not feeling loved, and your husband and then your husband doesn't take you to your favorite restaurant, you may feel that is proof that you are not lovable. Hence how you got into the fear base and shaming to kind of try and manipulate him into taking you to a restaurant. Whereas if you felt secure and you loved yourself, then it wouldn't matter so much. Then you could have a conversation with him without getting triggered about, I really want to go here tonight, and you could explain why or whatever it is. I mean, you could have you could respond versus react. And that's the same with your kids. Like, then you're not letting your kids push you to the limit, because that's when it's really happening. I mean, because you think about it, you're exhausted, you're stressed, your kids have pushed you, you snap. So what if you weren't exhausted? What if you weren't stressed? What if there's a way that you could make yourself feel that way, and then you wouldn't be reacting so much to what the outer pressures are doing? And that's really what this is really all about. So if we go back to the whole money thing, if you're feeling secure about your relationship with money, then you aren't trying to use money to make you feel secure. So now you can respond. It's like, well, I need to make, like I do have in business, and, cash flow goes up, cash flow goes down. I mean, none of this is going to change that. But now, instead of when the cash flow goes down, going into a tizzy and getting all worried and anxiety, my God, this is the start of a massive crash. And, I've been in business for over 20 years. So, I made money every single year, but yet somehow when you have the down months, you go into a big tizzy when you're based on fear. And so if you're based on love, you can be like, okay, so let's take a look at this. Maybe we need to look because this program isn't working anymore. Maybe we need to fix the marketing, or maybe, so you can look at things and you can respond to what's happening versus reacting. Does that make sense?
Yes, of course. Yeah, we're always better when we go inside and get our own needs met and fix our own stuff first, because then you're calmer, you're more centered, and you're not, like you said, in reaction mode. And so you can actually hear somebody differently. You can create space for that, and you're not so easily triggered. And so in the flip side, one of the things that probably needs to be added is that when you want to use love-based persuasion, it also helps when you're loving yourself first.
Yes.
When you are centered and whole and feeling good about yourself, and you have that going for you, so you can emanate love, versus if you're all triggered and feeling a deficit in some area of your life, then you're putting out, even if you're using love-based words, it's harder to match those frequencies when you're in fear or when you're in anger. Like you said, like that test, you're testing that person, your husband or your kids. And now even you may say the right words, but the energy behind it is not matching that.
Exactly. Yes. And that's part of the reason why I know another reason why I did the money podcast is because I get it for copy and sales. If you are in scarcity right now, if you are really worried about paying your bills next month, it is going to be really, really hard to market using love-based copy and marketing. It just is. So first off, be patient with yourself and be good to yourself. Beating yourself up is not the way to go. And just know that this is part of this is a process. And because the way to market and sell yourself with love, one of the ways is to be committed to everybody getting their needs met, including your financial needs. That's totally fine for you. I mean, that should be something that you're committed to. You're getting your financial needs met, but not being attached to the specific outcome. And what that means, don't be attached to, okay, this person that I'm about to get on the phone with has got to buy. Because if they don't buy, I don't know what I'm going to do. That's absolutely the wrong energy to be in, because first of all, you're going to sound really desperate, and then you're going to get into pursuing, and it's just a mess. So it's better to just be like, to be committed to having a great conversation, and committed to everyone getting precisely what they need. And if this is a good fit for them, then obviously you're hoping they're going to say yes, but you are not committed. You're not attached to it. You're not attached to the yes. So That's the being committed to the yes, but not attached to the yes. So now if we move this all to health, I feel like with like the healthy habits, like, eating better, with the weights, exercising, all of that. Again, it's like, I mean, coming from it from fear, like, okay, I want to look good and be in, it's kind of stuff like this might be a place to get started, but it's probably not going to sustain you. So again, if you're feeling unloved and and because you're feeling unloved, you start trying to over focus on your appearance. Well, if I just lost 10 pounds and then I would be loved, you're not really going from it the right way. So likely the habit won't stick. Whatever it is you're trying to do, like, if I lose 20 pounds. So again, if you approach love, if you approach your health and your fitness and your eating better as an act of love, like, you're switching your relationships, so you're asking your body, what do you want to do today? What kind of exercise do you want? What foods do you want to eat? What foods will nourish you? And if you really get down and start listening to what your body is telling you, that's again, and looking at it as an act of love versus, well, I've got to do, like looking at it as also like, well, I can't eat that ice cream because, I'm going to gain weight, and that's sugar and it's fattening. And yes, it is sugar and fattening, but if you're doing it from a place of denial, doesn't that make you just crave it all the more? You're more the expert here, JJ, so I feel a little out of my element.
No, well, it's about the use of language. It's about the use of focus. It's the same. You and I have the parallel of, I wrote Fit to Love and you wrote Love-Based Money and Love-Based Business. And they're saying the same thing. It's just how to take that concept and make it more real in terms of a practical way. Like you had asked me when you interviewed me, how to make that practical for someone who's listening to this, who recognizes, I was thinking about a client who understands the concepts, but isn't doing it because of the negative feelings that are being put out there and the self-abuse that happens every time she thinks about something fitness or food or weight loss related. There's the understanding that I get this love thing, but then there's the doing of the love thing. And there's the coming from, and so to hear the words from you about, different ways in which you can skew it to yourself helps to ease some of that emotion and bring us back down, like you said, listening to your body. And I think that's a perfect thing, because that was my recommendation to this particular client, was to start listening to your body. Stop making decisions based on what you're thinking about and start making. In fact, I had another consultation yesterday, and this person wants to lose some weight, and she's done programs where she's lost weight before, and now she's off of a program. So of course she just associates when she's off of a program that she gains weight, because she hasn't created her own program to live on. And a lot of the things that she's been told to do is based on timing, external timing, about eating every 2 to 3 hours or looking at the clock and, oh God, it must be lunchtime, versus checking in with your body. So I think that's a perfect way to segment and to connect what you're doing with what I'm doing and what everyone ultimately wants to be doing, which is to check in about how it feels, and how it feels is going to tell you if it's coming from love or fear.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you're feeling like, if you're getting into that should, and if it's feeling really heavy, then you're probably not on the right track. And instead just checking in and not beating yourself up. I think that's one of the keys too, because if you're beating yourself up, you're not in love at all. So giving yourself a break and just knowing that you're doing the best you can. And, and I think just focusing on that, doing the best you can in the moment. And that's all we can do, and loving yourself throughout. And that's going to take you far further than any kind of, being a whip master or standing over yourself like, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. Well, that's the other thing too. Saying you can't is actually, we're getting a little bit off kind of the love-based piece, but I think this is really powerful. I can't actually is very disempowering. And so saying I choose not to do this. So that's another part for your self-talk. Like, I can't eat that ice cream. I can't do X, Y, Z. Instead of saying that, or I can't eat that piece of cake because I'm going to blow my diet. say, I choose not to eat that piece of cake. When you actually go into that, you give yourself a pace of empowerment. I choose to exercise instead of saying, oh God, I've got to go exercise. Again, see how disempowering that is? Say, I choose to go take a walk. I choose to go do my weights. I choose to do this for my body. So if you can move your inner mind talk more to I choose to or choose not to, that's going to be far more powerful than anything else.
Agreed. I want to get people to say, instead of saying I should, say I want. And when it comes to exercise, if you don't want to exercise, but you tell yourself you should exercise, then say I want to exercise.
Yes.
So you don't have to be there yet. We should have to release the resistance and say I want to exercise, not I should, because should won't make you want to do anything.
Or I'm choosing to exercise even though I don't feel like it. You could say that too.
Yep. And that probably will get you to action faster than I want to. But you can say I want to exercise, but because I don't, I'm going to choose to exercise.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've still softened it. So so Michele, tell people I want you to tell them about everything, but let's just start with the podcast. Tell them about, because I think that whether you're an entrepreneur or not, I think that Love-Based Money is a great show for people to get inspired and hear about people's money journey. I was just interviewed for the show. I don't know when it'll be on, and I'll probably repurpose it here too for you guys. But I want you to go check out her show right now, because I know for a lot of people, whether it be weight loss or money or relationships, that hearing someone's story, whatever the focus is a great way for you to expand what's possible for you and give you some hope, and also for you to identify that, oh, that happened to someone else too. Oh, they've gone through that. And so you don't feel so alone or different or wrong or broken. So Michele, tell us about the show.
Yeah, that's exactly why I did it, because I feel like money. Well, okay, so I feel like overall, or my overarching sort of thing is that the deeper I got into this whole love versus fear, the more I realized how much of our lives we built on a foundation of fear, and not because of anything. I mean, it's not, again, everybody did, as best as they could do. But, the messages that we've been getting for a long time has been mostly on fear, doing all this stuff based on a foundation of fear. And so we've built businesses, we've built our lives, we've built our relationships. So, everything is sort of built on this fear, and especially money, because, how many messages about money that we've gotten over the years, like, we can't afford it. Money doesn't grow on trees. Rich people are greedy. So all of those messages, through my guests that I've had, I've had all sorts of money stories and a lot of them came with, stuff with childhood, things that they were told. And then they talk about how that impacted them later, and then how they were going to able to get around it. Because I feel like if we can sort of untangle our relationship with money, I feel like is a great mirror. It's a great mirror. Our health and relationships is too, but money, just feels like this universal mirror of how fearful we can be living our lives. And I feel like a way to untwist all that is to look at it through our relationships. I mean, to our relationship with money is what I meant.
Absolutely. So check out Michele's show, and it's called Love-Based Money. You can find it on iTunes or
everywhere,
however you listen to podcasts, right? And then also tell them about your blog.
And that's the lovebasedbiz.com. And so that's got a ton of resources. And I just upgraded. I'm very proud. I'm very proud, and I'm very excited because I finally upgraded the theme, so it's more of a magazine theme, which is something I have wanted to do. And I couldn't find the right theme. Anyways, it doesn't. My technical stuff doesn't matter. The point is it's done. And the beauty is it's really easy to search and find content, because I have so much great content on there about growing a business on a foundation of love, that I wanted people to be able to find it no matter when they came to the blog. So that's on there. The podcast is on there, and even a free book, How to Start a Business You Love and That Loves You Back. And it's not just for people who are starting a business. If you don't have a business you love, then that book will help as well.
Great. So everybody check out lovebasedbiz.com and also find Michele's podcast so that you can get more inspired and about money and other things, and start to shift some of the actions we take in all areas of our life from fear-based to love-based. Michele, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me.